Good. Is it afternoon yet? Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome. This is the first time that we have taken our Alumnus of the Year event and we have made it a lunch rather than a brunch. Typically, this is a brunch event, and we have a lot of time to work through it, David, but with having two graduations, we have a lot of experiments going on today. So most of our crowd will be over here, I anticipate, in about 10 minutes. But I don't want to slow things down because we have a 2 o'clock graduation and we have to have David in line at 1:30. So we're going to get started. And each year, I have the esteemed honor of welcoming alumni, welcoming friends and family to the Alumnus of the Year brunch. And today, as I stated, this is the first time we're having this lunch. Due to the growth this institution has experienced in the last 10 years, we've grown to a point where we're having to have 2 graduation ceremonies, and we're pretty excited about that. It's a wonderful time on campus. For me, I get the same feeling I got earlier this year when spring came and winter ended, and I saw new changes and growth, and I saw energy and beauty all around campus, and our graduates experienced the exact same thing. The Alumnus of the Year is a time for us to pause and to hold up our heads high and to put our happy smile on and say, look at our graduates. Look at the Honorable David A. Sampson. He's one of ours. He's a 1978 graduate of David Lipscomb College, Lipscomb University. So thank you for coming, for letting us showcase our graduates, men and women whose lives are being shaped for service in Christ's kingdom, graduates who are intellectually and professionally capable as any person on God's green earth. So we're so happy to have David and his wife Karen here with us. We're happy to have our trustees who are here with us as well. So please stand to our trustees who are here so we can give them a round of applause. I want you to stand for a purpose. And now that I've embarrassed them sufficiently, I wanted them to stand because they represent so much of what has been happening at Lipscomb University. It is their courage, it is their boldness and their leadership that has grown this institution to more than 85% over the last 10 years in student body, that has helped this institution to grow in its budget more than $75 million to do more work, more impact, particularly for God's kingdom. So thank you so very much. This is a university that is faith-focused and future-focused, a university that believes that what grounds us is what grows us. Thank you for coming, and welcome to Lipscomb University Alumnus of the Year lunch.
Let's pray together. Father in heaven, we thank you so much for this day. We thank you so much for the opportunity to come together, to fellowship, to celebrate, and to honor one of your children. Father, we thank you for this time you give us on this earth. We thank you for the opportunities that we have to glorify you through our acts of faith, our acts of giving, and our acts of submission. Father, we thank you so much for the children that you give us, for their laughter, for the joy that they put in our hearts. Father, we thank you for all these great and wonderful things that you've designed, because it helps us understand more and more how you love us, how you care for us, and how you yearn to be with us in heaven for eternity. Father, we're so thankful for your Son, for the promise that you made to send him back and to bring us all home to be with you for eternity. We thank you for this food. We thank you for all the ways you bless us. In your Son's holy name, amen.
One for your patience as we've made some adjustments today. It's a great day here at Lipscomb with our first ever 2 graduation ceremonies, so we're having to adjust some things on the fly. So I appreciate everyone's patience and understanding as we honor Dr. Sampson here today. I do want to say special thanks again to our Board of Trustees members who are here, Mr. David Solomon, Ms. Harriet Shivers, Mr. Jay Berry, Ms. Sally Dean, and Ms. Nika Stevens who are here with us today. So thank you so much for being here. Well, the way this is going to go, we have 3 people who are going to share thoughts and reflections about you, Dr. Sampson. I think they're aware that it's not a roast, so we'll see how that goes. We'll have first Dr. Craig Bledsoe, who is the Provost of Lipscomb University, followed by Ms. Karen Nichols, also a graduate of Lipscomb, Karen Nichols Sampson, Mr. Sampson's wife, and then followed by the Honorable Sandy K. Baruah, who joins us today from Detroit, Michigan. And Sandy is the President and CEO of Detroit Regional Chamber. So without further ado, Dr. Bledsoe.
Well, first of all, let me say what an honor it is to have David here, and we really appreciate David accepting this honor. David and I probably go back maybe longer than anybody except maybe Karen, and that's a long time. And you're going to see a slideshow here, just a real brief slideshow that I wanted to kind of share a little bit about David's life here at Lipscomb when he was a student. Yeah, this table over here really wants to know about that, don't you? Yeah. Yeah. So let me just say this first. You can learn a lot from teaching. Okay, I've found over the years that I learn a lot from teaching. And one of the things that you learn fast is that there are some students who go on to lead very successful lives, and you can pick those students out real quickly. I mean, it's just amazing how quickly you can see that. And they often target their own success very early. You know, it may take a twist or turn here or there, but they often target that success very early. They seem to start their professional preparation when others are still deciding maybe which fast food restaurant they're going to eat at. They sense quite early in their lives what it will take to achieve those goals. And more often than not, they will seek out a mentor or mentors to help them make it through life. These students are wonderful to teach, and as graduates, it's wonderful to watch them as they make their way through life, impacting the lives of others in very positive ways. And our alumnus of the year, David Sampson, was one of those students, and consequently, he's one of those Lipscomb students who've gone on to make, I think, just a tremendous impact in this community and in the world, in your life and in my life. When I first met David, I have to tell you this story, a little story about my first class with David. Real quickly, when I left here, I was going to go to law school. And on the Sunday after I graduated, would be tomorrow for these graduates, my major professor, Patrick Deese, pulled me aside at church. And he said, "You don't need to go to law school. You won't enjoy it. You won't like it. You need to come back here and teach." Now, he had been my mentor all through my time here. And I did that. So in a year and a half, well, 2 years, after a year and a half of graduate school with my master's and 6 months working for the Tennessee State Legislature, I came back and started in the summer, 2 years after I graduated. I was actually teaching students who I had sat in class with as a student. That was awful. Nobody should ever do that. It was awful. So my very first class in the summer, I was teaching in the summer, had 4 students in it. It had Larry Bumgardner, 4.0 student, who went on to become the director of the Reagan Library. It had Gary Pearson, another 4.0 student. It had, I'm not sure what Gary's doing now, but I know he went on and got a master's and graduate degrees. It had Mike Walters in it, I think, who was also a 4.0 student. And it had David Sampson, who was a 4.0 or a very high, I don't know what his GPA was. I didn't go back and look at the transcript. I thought about it. But I didn't go back and do that. But you know, here were these 4 students, and all 4 of them intimidated the life out of me. I mean, I would walk into class. I saw the first day, I saw who was on the roll, because I knew most of them as students when I was a student. I saw who was on the roll. I was like just really intimidated. You know, I had never taught a class before. I'd go in in the evening and study real hard to catch up, to be ahead of them the next day. And the only thing that got me through that experience, and I was awful, by the way, as a teacher, the only thing that got me through that experience was the fact that they had no idea what I was talking about. It was statistics. I could have gone in there and said anything, and they would have written it down and just gone with it. So it was great. But it was just an amazing experience for me. And I tell you that because it was a mentor in my life that I think affected David also, Pat Deese. And Dr. Deese was a really significant, some of you know Pat Deese maybe, but he was a significant influence and one of those faculty members who would pull you aside and mentor you and talk to you about your life and your career and what you should be doing. So early on, David, when he came to Lipscomb, he was very committed to being in public life. He was committed to being involved in school. So if we got the slideshow, there's David. And you can run the next one. Karen. And this is really Karen's, this is David's best experience at Lipscomb. Somehow the captions have gotten cut off, but that's all right. Next slide. And David was student body president, and secretary of the student body was Pam Turberville. Sherry Turberville, that's right. Pam was older. Sherry Turberville. And they became student body president. Next slide. And David very quickly, this is David down here, David very quickly set out to change the landscape of Lipscomb. And in doing so, he was head of this committee that rewrote, he didn't have one, the Student Government Constitution. It was the first Student Government Constitution. And there are a lot of interesting people in. Gary would know most of them. David would know most of them. Gary Pearson's over here. There's Karen, not far from David here. Tony Saunders is back there. But very interestingly, standing right behind David is, anybody recognize the picture? Beth Halterman Harwell. It is now the Speaker of the Tennessee General Assembly. This was a pretty powerful group here back in, when was that, 77, 78, something like that. Yeah. Next slide. Then David decided, he was already involved. We were involved in politics, Republican politics in high school. But he became a pretty significant figure in Republican politics here in the state of Tennessee, working for Bill Brock and becoming the state chairman of the Tennessee College Republicans. If you read on through there are other people in there. Barry Stowe was one of the people that was involved with that, and many of you know Barry. Another one is Greg Bierman that I've kind of kept track of Greg. He's become a political consultant and has been consulting even in Russia in the past. I hope he's not doing that now, but he has been consulting in Russia in the past. So an interesting group of people that kind of surrounded David, and David was at the center of that and the heart of that. Now, you all know David's career. There's a lot there. He has made significant contributions to public life. He's had a tremendous impact in public life. But real quickly, I believe that David's most significant impact is not because he's been Deputy Secretary of Commerce or CEO of this or that, but because he's had influence on people. For the 38,000 people that worked for him in commerce, but especially Lipscomb students. Okay, this is the piece that most of you don't see. He loves our students. He is so kind and generous with his time with our students. And, many of them have aspirations of public life just like he does, or did. He does still. He's been most kind when he's on our campus to meet with students from the Political Science Department, Law, Justice, and Society program, informally, or go to classes with them, and share with them what he's learned from a life of politics and public service. And also, when our students go to Washington to visit, David is always ready to have dinner with them, no matter how busy he might be. He seeks, and this is the mentor piece, he seeks to mentor them. And I've talked to David several times about what he's going to do when he gets through with the public life thing. And every time he says, I want to mentor students, which to me goes back to Pat Deese, goes back to the influence he had on my life, David's life, Karen's life. Karen was a political science major also. It's people like that that make a difference, that have an impact on us and our students. And I appreciate David for the vision for life that he lives and with which he challenges our students. And at one of those dinners recently, I think Rick Culberson was telling me this, at one of the dinners with our students in Washington, D.C., he told our students to be open to God's guidance and for God to lead you in unexpected ways. And I believe that's what's happened in David's life, and it's led him wherever he's been, public service, from here at Lipscomb. You know, we're going to take a little bit of credit for this, David, from here at Lipscomb and on into Texas and Washington, D.C. and around the world. So that vision of life, which I think is rooted in faith, integrity, and professionalism, I think captures well the impact that David's had on our students and all of us in this room and those around him. So thank you, David.
Hi, I'm Karen Sampson and have had the pleasure of being married to David for, holy moly, 36 years, I guess now, a long time. And I get to write speeches, but I never get to give speeches, so this is kind of a different venue for me. And it's really such a pleasure to be back on campus here. When I came to Lipscomb in 1975, I brought with me a whole lot of experience of being the new kid, because I'd been an Air Force bred. My family served. My dad was an Air Force dentist, and we'd lived all over the world. And so we pulled up stakes, and we'd move, and we'd start over, and I'd be the new kid every time. But what I have to say is everywhere that we went, the church was our family. And so there would be different faces, but they'd have the same concerns as the folks in the last town. And there would be different accents, whether it was Alabama or England, but they would sing the same hymns, just with a different accent. Different climates, but the same community of faith. So when I came to Lipscomb, it was like coming home to the hometown that I never had, because those were my people, and they were everywhere, and it was awesome. I loved it. And it really was my home for the next 4 years. And it was such an exciting time academically and socially, and it's hard to estimate or overestimate really how much impact those 4 years had and continue to have on my life. The subjects that I studied in high school, sort of studied, really came alive. Pat Deese was a terrific teacher, and so many wonderful teachers I had here. And the expectations here were high, and we had to live up to them. And being smart was valuable here, maybe not so much in high school. But studying the Bible academically was fascinating instead of just being Sunday school material. And the camaraderie among the students was just terrific fun. And when I was here, Willard Collins was the president of the university, and he was pretty much an unabashed matchmaker. He was really into that, and he routinely encouraged us to look around at chapel because your future husband or wife might be in the room, you know, and we always laughed about it, but he was right. So David and I started dating when we were juniors, and we got married the next day after graduation because all the family was here, we might as well, so we got married. And that was the start of a new adventure. And when David asked me to marry him on a sunset beach in Florida, the romantic soul, he also told me at that point that he was not going to go to law school, but he was going to go into full-time ministry. So I think it was sort of a full disclosure moment. Do you really want to do this? But I was happy enough to go along wherever that young man was going to go. And I enjoyed being a preacher's wife, and I enjoyed being a Chamber of Commerce executive wife, and I enjoyed being a presidential appointee's wife, and a trade association executive wife. I've enjoyed it all. And I enjoy, one of the things that I've loved the most is that David has been my yes man. He said yes to hosting a foreign exchange student. He said yes to learning to ride horses. He said yes to traveling abroad. He said, and when the adoption agency called to say, would you accept twins to adopt? He said yes to that too. And that's probably the greatest adventure of our lifetime, is our two boys and raising them up. But all of those, they've all been wonderful adventures. And because I said yes to David, I've had an adventurous life. I've seen things, I've been places and done things that many people never have the chance to see or to go or to do. But even more importantly, I've enjoyed those things with a thoughtful, good man by my side. And I've had the confidence every day of my married life that my husband does things that matter with complete integrity, and he makes life better for people. And that matters to me. And so many thanks to Lipscomb, because this was the starting point for the adventure that has been my lifetime. Thank you for this wonderful honor that you're giving David. He really is a wonderful man. And this school has played a significant part in laying the foundation for the many fine things that he's accomplished, both personally and in his career. So thank you very much. It's a terrific honor.
In the days leading up to this event, I received a message from David Sampson's office. It stated, "Please remind Sandy that the Lipscomb University event is not a roast." I came anyway. Actually, it is an honor for myself, my wife Lisa, to be here at this prestigious university to celebrate my former boss, my good friend, Dr. David Sampson, as Lipscomb's alumnus of the year. You know, finding the right words and the right tone for an event like this is a bit of a trick. With the roast option off the table, my first stab at these remarks sounded a little bit like a eulogy, an approach that I'm sure would be equally unwelcomed. So let me just take a few minutes to describe my journey with David. I met David in the early days of the George W. Bush administration. It was before 9/11, and David had just been confirmed by the United States Senate to serve as President Bush's U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce. I was thrilled that David had selected me to be a part of the team at the Commerce Department, and that I would have the opportunity to work for David, for Secretary Don Evans, and of course, President Bush. Now, joining David's team was a bit interesting. David was from conservative Texas. I was from eco-friendly Oregon. David was formal and buttoned up. Being from Oregon, I was pretty happy that I was wearing pants. David was serving his first tour of duty in Washington. I had served twice before. David liked country music and ranches. I liked rock and roll and urban centers. He drove a Cadillac. I drove a Volvo. David prayed in his office. I swore in mine. But as an Episcopalian, I think that was not a surprise to David. I share this for a reason. It would have been very easy for David to overlook someone like me, someone who was so vastly different from David. But David's great gift, one that he has demonstrated throughout his career, no doubt honed here on the Lipscomb campus, is his ability to assemble outstanding teams, unite them in purpose, and establish high standards. In those early days, David created a team mosaic that encompassed fellow Texans, a Philadelphia lawyer, a veteran of the Reagan White House, an author and baseball executive from Illinois, a hardcore political operative from New York, and me, a corporate management consultant from the left coast. Now, I don't know if melding all of us all together was art or science, but David did it, and did it very quickly. David led the team that literally transformed a long-neglected, underperforming, Great Society-era social welfare program into a model for for federal government effectiveness and results and made it a policy leader. David set the tone early. In the aftermath of the terrorist attacks of 9/11, David made our agency, the Economic Development Administration, which normally would not have a role in such a circumstance, a meaningful player at the highest levels, helping New York and Virginia recover from those terrible attacks, and earned our agency a seat at the table at the White House that eventually led to the creation of the Department of Homeland Security. And while the Hoover Building in Washington, D.C., the home of the Commerce Department, looks stately on the outside, especially given its location between the White House and the Washington Monument, the interior was nothing short of shabby. Worn carpets and drapes, dated technology, peeling paint. David embarked on a top-to-bottom overhaul of the office with the mantra, how can people take pride in themselves and the work that they do if they work in such depressing and neglected surroundings? But more importantly, however, he vastly changed how the agency did its work and vastly improved its effectiveness. We were the first civilian agency to fully implement a performance-balanced scorecard strategic evaluation tool, a concept so innovative at the federal government that it earned David and the team a place in the Balanced Scorecard Hall of Fame. He set the standard that good enough was no longer good enough. It didn't matter if you were a long-time civil servant or a political appointee, you were held to high standards. And under David's leadership, people who were retired in place were quickly moved to retired at home status, vastly increasing level of performance and sending the message that we meant business. David put strong standards in place for the grant program that we administered, and actually moved the agency from being a grant-making entity to an investment-making entity, completely changing the mindset of the agency, requiring a return on taxpayer dollars, much as you would in the private sector. Now, none of those things were possible. Each one of those initiatives, and the many others that I don't have time to go into, when David first embarked upon them, he was told, no, it cannot be done. No by the government lawyers, no by the good and faithful civil servants. He even got a few no's from his hand-picked team. Too expensive, too risky, too politically unpopular, too bold, too much work. But the great thing about David is that he didn't know it couldn't be done, so he just did it. He's living proof that you can make a difference in government. You just can't take no for an answer. In fact, I created a slogan for our team. It's from the Jerry Reed theme song to the Smokey and the Bandit movie. You guys remember the song? Jerry Reed sings, "We've got a long way to go. We've got a short time to get there. We're going to do what they say can't be done." I was just trying to impress David that I knew at least one country artist. Now, of course, success begat success. In just 3 years, through David's leadership, he transformed an agency that had the unofficial motto of keep your head down and maybe your budget won't get cut, to an agency that was widely recognized as one of the top performing agencies in the federal government and one with one of the strongest teams, led by one of the strongest leaders. David was elevated, as we all know, to serve as Deputy Secretary of Commerce, expanding his portfolio to matters such as cybersecurity, international trade and foreign investment, patent protection, even space satellites. In this role, he continued to represent President Bush to domestic and international stakeholders with his trademark excellence and elegance. And of course, today he leads one of the most important and respected business associations in our nation and continues to make a positive impact on national policy. And while I am here at this podium representing David's service in the Bush administration, I am just one of many that David developed, coached, and mentored along the way. The role I'm playing today could have easily been played by many others, including my friend Danette Coble, who's in the audience today with her husband Steve, who flew in from Texas just for this event. All of us, David, are indebted to you. Your success has become our success, and we are very grateful for what you've given us. The leadership and the student body here at Lipscomb University have made a very wise decision to select the Honorable David A. Sampson as your Alumnus of the Year. His accomplishments to date, but just as importantly, his accomplishments to come, have honored not only his family, his home state of Texas, his current and former colleagues, certainly President George W. Bush, and Lipscomb University, of course. David, Lisa, and I congratulate both you and Karen on this very special event. Congratulations.
Well, good afternoon to all of you. It may seem strange that I'm still dressed in my robe. Remember, in England, they wore these all the time, all day long, every day, because it was so cold, and they really were very versatile that way. We've got to rush back and do a second graduation, and that graduation will honor our guest here today as well. David, would you just come on up? I want to do 2 or 3 things with you, and the long speeches will take place later, okay? When I was given a list, as I am each year, of those who had been nominated for this award, it didn't take very long for me to select from that list our honoree today. I got to know David for the first time, boy, it must have been 6 or 7, 8 years ago, in your office in Washington, and have known, especially through Craig, your career and what you have been doing both before and after. Have a letter to read to you, and then I want to make a presentation to you, and then we'll do the more formal stuff in front of 4,000 people in a few minutes, okay? So this is just the informal kind of family gathering that takes place. But here is one note I wanted to read. Dear David, congratulations on being named the 2014 Lipscomb University Alumnus of the Year. In business and government, you've proven yourself to be an effective leader who delivers results. I'm grateful for your hard work, your commitment to our country, particularly during my administration. Laura and I are pleased to join your family and friends in congratulating you on this well-deserved accolade. We send our best wishes to you and Karen. Sincerely, George W. Bush. Congratulations on that. We know that's a very special relationship for him and also for you, and it's wonderful for him to remember it. When we get to the graduation moment, we will give you a plaque and read a resolution and do all those formal things. But at this luncheon, we typically try to give you something that's just a little bit more versatile and useful, and maybe something you'll keep a little closer to you, and that is the glass bowl there. Let me just tell you the story of it, and then we'll send it to you. It was done by a friend of ours, Simon Pierce, who has a small studio in Quechee, Vermont. And we knew him 20, 25 years ago when he was new from Ireland, just beginning in this country, just beginning in terms of commerce, a small business. That now has expanded, so he has studios in many cities and really a worldwide reputation. So we want that to be a symbol from us of our appreciation for you, and within that is buried a symbol of another person who, because of the opportunities that you have provided, has been very, very successful in our nation. So thank you for allowing us to honor you. The most important thing you'll do today is to be an example in front of hundreds and hundreds of students of what they can become. And that's a pretty awesome responsibility. You've already fulfilled it. I will say to them, as I often do, that students come to a university as a consumer, but students leave a university as its product. And while we're not responsible for all that goes on after that, we take great pride in the product that you are. Congratulations. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Lowry, and Sandy and Karen, what a privilege it is for us to be on campus today. It's beautiful, beautiful spring day in Middle Tennessee, one of the most beautiful parts of our country. It is with no false modesty that I say the honor you bestow on me today far exceeds whatever honor that I bring to Lipscomb. However, as E.B. White said, it is deeply satisfying to win a prize in front of a lot of people. So, what a blessed life and career I've enjoyed. Truly, it is, I believe, unimaginable and unexplainable from a purely human perspective. God's been very gracious indeed, and looking back, I can discern his providential hand at every significant moment in my life. And certainly, one of the most significant of those moments was when I came to Lipscomb in the fall of 1975, which forever changed the trajectory of my life. Winston Churchill said, "To every person there comes that special moment when he is tapped on the shoulder to do a very special thing unique to him. What a tragedy if that moment finds him unprepared for the work that could be his finest hour." Well, I've certainly had more than my fair share of being tapped on the shoulder to do something special. And because of Lipscomb, I was not unprepared. Lipscomb truly occupies a special place in my heart, for nearly every blessing I have has flowed in some way from my experiences here. Of course, as you know, it was here that I met Karen, and without her many sacrifices, her devotion to our sons and me, the fact is none of us would have amounted to anything. She's extremely bright, engaging, well-read, and talented. She was a beloved campus social worker at Christ Haven for Children in Keller, Texas for 18 years, and talk about positively impacting children's lives. She certainly did in that role. And then for 8 years, she was a speechwriter and special assistant to the Commissioner of Children, Youth, and Families at the Department of Health and Human Services in President Bush's administration. And I think the merit or the esteem with which she is held, her boss, Joan Old, the commissioner, remains devoted to Karen to this very day. And it was here that accomplished, dedicated professors not only inspired in me a love for learning, but equally important, taught me how to learn. Now, the reality was I was not one of those 4.0 students in Craig's first class because I did not have a great first year here. I came from an era of experimental education, and some of you may remember those days in public education, where what passed for English courses in the high school that I attended was you let kids read whatever they want, Field and Stream, Sports Illustrated, and the idea was that if they just read something that they would be well educated. But the fact is that Dr. Deese, in that first year, about midway through the second, I guess in those days it was quarters system, into the second quarter, which would have been, I guess, in the spring or late spring, or early summer, early winter, late spring. But he pulled me aside one day and he said, "Look, I think you're really bright, and I think that you have potential, but you're really not prepared. Things that you should have gotten in high school, you just missed out." And what he did, he took it upon himself. He said, "If you'll stay here after spring quarter is over and stay here this summer, I'll put together a special summer package for you that will get you where you need to be." And I spent that summer in basic English for teachers. It was an English class for teachers who are going to teach English. and spent all that summer diagramming sentences. And he had me, I took courses of American literature and English lit. And yeah, I don't think I would have made my living forever after writing and communicating ideas had it not been for him being willing to say, and instead of just pass you through, to recognize the deficiencies with which I entered college. Now, after that first year, I didn't have a 4.0 that first year. I had a 4.0 the rest of my career here, but I was not a 4.0 student in Craig's first class because I had already blown that my first year here. But it's pretty obvious, I think, if you look at the span of my career, that I was not a subject matter expert on most of the issues for which I was responsible. But the rigorous academic environment at Lipscomb prepared me to research, to read, to ask penetrating questions, to lead people, and to communicate. And Lipscomb University empowered me to take on a wide array of professional challenges. Not long ago, earlier last month, I was invited to speak at a service marking the 60th anniversary of the Park Road Church of Christ in Arlington, Texas, a church I served as a very young man. And on that occasion, I referenced Hebrews 11, where the author highlights the faithful lives of men and women of old who led up to Jesus, the completer of the faith. And then as chapter 12 opens, he says, "And therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up, and let us run with endurance the race God has set before us." And on a day such as this, I am keenly aware of the crowd of faithful witnesses who have encouraged, comforted, inspired, and assisted me on this relay race. And I continue to be spurred on by the witnesses who handed the baton to me earlier in the race, and I am increasingly conscious of the people I will one day hand the baton to as my race draws to a close and theirs begins. Of course, I think of my father, the late Burl H. Sampson, who made it possible for me to attend Lipscomb. He was one of the brightest men I ever knew. He graduated from high school at the age of 16 and then volunteered to serve in the Army early in 1942, a member of both the 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions. His father died just as the war in Europe was drawing to a close in 1945. And when Dad was demobilized at the end of the war, he came home to run the family farm and started a timber business. Now, because of family responsibilities that he had to his widowed mother, he never had the opportunity to take advantage of the GI Bill, but he knew the value of education, and he made my education at Lipscomb possible. He was a wonderful Christian gentleman. And then there are the mentors who have blessed my life at other key pivotal moments. Some like Sonny Loing and Bob Duncan, both of whom were key supporters early in my career in Texas, are now part of that great cloud of witnesses that Hebrews speaks of. And other mentors that I've had are still with us. I think of men like David Moritz, who made so many of my opportunities possible. Don Thomas, a wise and loving elder at the Park Road Church, was a terrific support both in my efforts at the church and my transition to public life. Men like Secretary Evans and Gutierrez of the U.S. Commerce Department, who taught me so much. Both were very accomplished businessmen, but humble men. Great leaders of people, but knew how to get results. And of course, President George Bush, who took me to Austin and brought me to D.C. And I'm very proud to have served under him in some of the most trying times in our nation's history. And finally, there are my colleagues. As I said earlier, I was never a subject matter expert on most of the organizations I was responsible for. But I think the one constant theme throughout my career and the secret sauce of the high-performing organizations I built and led are the exceptional, talented people I was able to recruit. And I am so deeply honored that several of them are here today. They were always gracious, or almost always, when I got the credit for the work they did. And many of them have worked for me in multiple organizations, which means either I'm doing something right or they're in need of serious psychiatric help. They've traveled the country and the world with me. They've seen me at my worst and always made me look at my best. I value their friendship and loyalty beyond words, and every one of them has gone from success to success in their lives, and I'm so proud of them. Teddy Roosevelt once remarked, "Far and away the best prize that life offers is the chance to work hard at work worth doing." Well, there's plenty of work worth doing still to do, and Lord willing, I will still have the chance to work hard before my race is over. So thank you all very much for the opportunity to be here. Karen and I are deeply touched, and may God bless you all.
Thank you all so very much. I know our time is short, but David and Karen, thank you so very much for honoring us, for allowing us the opportunity to honor you. Winston Churchill also said, "Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts." I think what we have heard about you and your life and the lives that you have touched reflects the courage that you have to continue that really counts. Thank you all very much. Be blessed, and we're going to meet you all at graduation. If President Lowry can come up for just a few pictures, and David and Carrie can come up, we would appreciate that as quickly as possible. Sandy, Craig.
Ladies?